Isn't it interesting that when we drive around, we usually just notice a sea of cars. We don't really pay attention. That is until we buy a new car. And then all that we seem to see is that vehicle on the road. We seem to be attracted to what's similar, what's familiar to us. Jess, our eldest daughter, has babysat MJ's children since Jana was just 9 months old, just over 5 years now. She actually has Jana and Nico today, and Jana is now a big 6-year-old girl. I remember watching Jess with Jana and her big sisters, Ava and Tara, a few years ago. It was summer, and Jess was getting them ready for a swim. She was putting sunblock on, which drew their attention to their skin. Ava and Tara were telling Jess that Jana didn't need sunblock because her skin was different to theirs. It was darker. And I remember Jana looking at her arm and her face dropping. I remember she looked at her sister's arms and she was, the face was dropping. She was looking sad about it until Jess noticed her reaction. And Jess immediately held out her arm next to Jana and said, "You're like me. Our skin is the same." To that, Jana got so excited because it is much more important for these girls to be like Jess than each other. Words have the power to unite or to alienate. And sadly, so often we choose the latter. But in these moments, it's good to remember the simple fact that we are more alike than we are different. Did you know that we are actually 99.9% genetically identical to every person we meet? Gentlemen, you are 99.9% identical to George Clooney. Richie McCaw. Yeah, before your heads get too big, Donald Trump. Carl Seiferloy. Sarah, this one's for you, Beyonce. Your annoying co-worker, the Pope. We are all basically the same, genetically, that is. I want that just to sink in for a minute. Turn to the person next to you and say, "We are the same." Our genome, the genetic material that we are made up of, includes 3 billion base pairs. That's billion base pairs, the tiny chemical units that make up the genes that form the strands known as DNA. That means that between any two people, roughly 2.999 billion base pairs are exactly the same. To put it another way, if we were to print our genome, it would take up to 262,000 pages, and only 500 would differ from person to person. We are much more alike than we are different. And in a world that seems to have more division every day, it's important to remember our shared humanity. But I believe that the enemy gets us to focus on what makes us different, because that creates division and dysfunction and disunity. And all he needs is that little gap in between us to begin to wriggle his way in, to cause more harm and more separation. And sadly, I think one of the easiest ways for him to do that is to cause us to focus on our differences. And he uses something that comes to us so naturally, something that we use often without even thinking: our words. Because words can so easily tear us apart. Our words matter, church. I think most of us grew up hearing the saying, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me." What a load of rubbish. Research says that it takes 10 positive comments to begin to undo the effects of just one negative comment. I think it's far easier to heal broken bones than it is to heal broken hearts and messed up thinking. Carl introduced this idea on week one of our series when he shared his story of how a single thoughtless comment can rob a child of their joy, can cause them to put on armour that they were never designed to wear. Kelly, I don't know if you know Kelly. She's been a friend of mine for a long time now, and she works here at Papster. She has a story as well about the impact of words over her life, and she's going to share that with us today. Take a look at the screens.
I developed an eating disorder when I was about 16 years old, and it became full-blown anorexia when I was 16 and a half or so, and that came as a result of a few people speaking into my life. And the first would be a really close family member who I used to attend university lectures with. I was a very good 4-year-old child, and I was allowed to go and sit with her instead of going to preschool, which I hated preschool. I would cry and cry and cry. And this particular day, this person didn't want me to go to her lecture, and so I had to stay with my grandmother, and I really didn't want to. I felt very homesick with my grandmother, but this person said to me, if you don't cry, I'll buy you a surprise. And I cried because I really didn't want to stay there, and I'm a crybaby. So I got home, and the gift was given to me, and I was very, very excited about the gift, and my dad walked in the door after work had finished, and I grabbed his hand and said, you've got to come and look at my gift that I got. And as I was walking out the door, the family member said to me, you really don't deserve that gift. And I was mortified. And it stuck with me forever. And then years later, my parents divorced. And then when I was at high school, I had a boy that I had a crush on, and he was kind of everything in my world at the time, and he would come up to me and he would pinch my cheeks and he would pinch my arms and he'd poke me in the stomach and say, ooh, look at all that fat. And that ruined me. And it was from there that I decided that it was better to drop some weight. And so I dropped more weight and developed anorexia. About the same space of time, I went to Australia and happened to bump into a photographer who decided that he would offer to take free photos of me, and while I was having the photographs taken, he decided that he abused me. But I didn't have a voice, I'd lost my voice. And then after that, there was a school teacher who has now actually been put into jail for other abusive situations that he put girls into, but because I was already broken and already a victim and had already lost my voice, he took advantage of that as well. And then there were issues in workplaces with other men who decided that they saw a victim, and I had no voice. And then I met my amazing husband, and I was allowed to have a voice. And I was allowed to share the hurt and share the fear of being in a relationship with somebody. And he taught me how to be in a relationship, and he taught me how to be in a marriage. I am very blessed to have him. When my children came along, I grew up with them a little bit. And as they grew older, and I could see the impact of peers and media and just life in general attacking them. It was probably at the moment of them being around 10 or 11 that I decided that I needed to not repeat the cycle, and that they needed to learn to have a voice, to be strong within themselves, to have courage, and to not be afraid. So I have been so mindful of being that parent that has the conversations that are hard, especially with my daughter, in terms of being careful with putting herself in dangerous situations, or being mindful of the friends that she has around her and what they are speaking into her life. And then I've watched in awe of my son, who has stood up and faced his peers with a courage and strength that blows my mind. And I can see that words are such an integral part of our lives, and they can bring ruin or they can bring life. This is Kelly Tams, and this is my story.
I want to ask you to do something that we've never probably done before. I just want you to stand and honour Kelly. Can we just stand together and honour Kelly for what she just did for us? Thanks, church. It's really hard. Kelly, we honour you. We thank you for your vulnerability and your courage today. Kelly's someone in my life who has turned words around and uses them as such an encouragement to build people up, and I'm so grateful for you, Kelly. Proverbs 18:21 says, the tongue can bring death or life. People can die because of something said. Tongues can be weapons of mass destruction. They can start holocausts and wars. The words we speak can be the death of marriages, families, governments, churches. They can be the death of relationships, hopes, reputations, and ourselves. But the words that we speak can also bring life. The tongue can reconcile and restore relationships. They can foster peace. The words we speak can make marriages sweet, families strong, and churches healthy. They can bring hope, instill peace, and create understanding. The Bible talks about the words that we speak countless times. But today we're going to have a look at Jesus' words in Luke chapter 6. In Luke chapter 6, Jesus is spending time with his disciples. There are crowds of people there who have come to hear what he has to say, and the Pharisees, the religious, are there looking on as well. The Pharisees that day, like usual, are looking for ways that they can trap Jesus. They are focused on what makes Jesus different instead of wanting to work together with them. And Jesus is challenging them. He is challenging their traditional thinking. He questions their belief around the Sabbath and what should and shouldn't be done on that day. And then he asks them in verse 9, which is lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or evil, to save life or destroy it? And then he gets his preach on as only Jesus can. He talks about loving our enemies. He says it's easy to love those who are like you, who you see as the same as you. But it's not so easy to love those who are different to you. He says in verse 35, love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then he continues with some do's and don'ts and some really plain talking. He says, do not judge, do not condemn, but do forgive and do give. He says, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, take the plank out of your eye and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. In verses 43 to 45, he says, no good tree bears bad fruit, and no bad tree bears good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People don't pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil out of the evil stored up in his heart. Now get this. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Pretty straight talking, hey? Doesn't leave any room for confusion. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. What is our heart full of today? Out of the abundance, out of the fullness, out of the overflow of our heart, the mouth speaks. A critical heart produces a critical tongue. A self-righteous heart produces judgmental words. A bitter heart produces cutting words. An ungrateful heart produces complaining words. But a loving heart produces kind words. A faithful heart produces truthful words. A peaceful heart produces words that restore. A trusting heart produces encouraging words. The reality is that the words we speak reflect what is filling our heart. And if we are not speaking life, we are speaking death. Words have power. And knowing that should encourage us not to be so reckless with our words. They have the power to set each other up or tear each other down. And sadly, I think that often as a church, we've lost the ability to set one another up to win. I know that every person sitting here today, this is going to be a hard one. I know every person sitting here today has a story to tell about how words spoken into our lives have had a negative impact. And I am no exception. I want to start by saying that I have an awesome family. I am truly blessed by my sister, by my brothers who have taught me so much in life and have been such an encouragement to me. I've told you before about my mum. I've learnt what unconditional love really looks like with skin on by her constant example in my life. And my dad was awesome in lots of ways. But like all of us, he was also broken in lots of ways as well. My dad was proud of achievements. He was proud of status, and he was proud of wealth, much more than what he could see inside a person. And so to be the little sister of siblings who have achieved really quite incredible things, I paled in comparison. I always felt it, but it was never stated, never spoken over my life. Not until about 5 months before my dad passed away. You see, it had always messed with me, and my dad wasn't well. And so I thought I would finally ask the hard question. I would hopefully put to bed what I hoped was a misconception. I said to my dad that I felt like he'd always been proud of my brother Wade for his achievements at uni and the work that he did and the money that he earned. I told him I thought he'd always been proud of my brother Glenn because he's a doctor and a well-known New Zealand poet. I told him I thought he was always proud of my sister Tracy, who has her letters in music, teaches piano, has played so amazingly well in church her whole life, and the biggie, she produced grandsons. But I told him that I didn't feel like he'd ever been proud of me. Here was my moment. I'd said the hard thing. I had asked the tough question. I was ready. And he replied, "Don't worry, you've still got time." We never spoke about it again. And so to this day, his words remain. And I admit that sometimes those words grow loud. Sometimes they play on repeat in my head. And I can react in a situation out of that pain. But it's then that I have to remind myself that God always speaks life into our situation, into our circumstance. Words that are so very different to the negative ones that may have shaped us. And you know what? We have to decide to either buckle under the intimidation or to change that in our journey and write a different story moving forward. Our call as a church is to work together, to unite, not so that we feel good about each other, but unite for a purpose, the purpose revealed in John 17:23. Jesus is praying here and he says, I am in them. That's us. He says, he is in us and you are in me. That's God is in Jesus. And he says, may we experience such perfect unity that the world would know you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me. May they experience such perfect unity that the world will know you sent me and that you love them. God calls us to unite, be a team, become a movement, an unstoppable force, and move forward like we spoke about a few weeks ago. He asks us to do this so that everyone will know that God sent us, that God saved us, and that he loves us. Our call is to set one another up to win. One of my favourite speakers talked about this at a conference that I attended a couple of years ago. Whether our insecurity wants us to or not, our job from generation to generation is to be one another's greatest cheerleader. To say to each other, I want you to go further. I want you to succeed where I failed. I want to help you win in life. But so often when we should applaud, we sit on our hands. When we should speak up, we stay silent. When one steps forward, another steps away. The enemy knows that when we unite, everything changes. When we don't just sing songs about loving each other and we don't just say, yeah, I'm for you. But when we actually show up to be there for one another and with one another, everything changes. The enemy isn't scared of us saying that we're united. He's frightened when we actually are united. And these two things are very different. And so today I'm asking us to set one another up to win, to model what so many fail to do. Can we be the church that is known for encouragement? The church that doesn't compete against each other but compels one another to succeed, to win, and to try again. All we have to do is read the Bible to see the history that kept repeating itself when brother would turn against brother. The first murder in the Bible is when one brother, instead of setting his brother up to win, lets his jealousy take over and he instead kills him. We see it again with Jacob and Esau, one betraying the other so that he can get more, achieve more, be seen as more significant, more important. David steps up to take on a giant, and those that should have been for him turn against him. They say, who do you think you are? And when Joseph is given a nice shiny coat that he didn't ask for, his brothers hate him. Because of the blessing he receives, they throw him in a pit and they sell him. We see it all around us. We see it at work, at school, on the sports field. And I would love to say that we don't see it in church because we shouldn't see it in church. But how often do we see it? When we should be helping each other realize our dreams for our lives. Because when we pray for each other, encourage each other, when we build each other up and set each other up to win, then their win is my win. Your win is my win. My win is your win. Our win is inside the girl next to us. Our win is in what he will birth. Our win is the confidence that she now has to step into what God has called her to. And we have a choice, church. We can stay bitter. We can say, no one was there for me. No one set me up to win, so I'm not going to set anybody else up to win. Anything I get, I earned it. Anything God gives me is my opportunity. Or we can get up. We can dust ourselves off. And we can choose to never become that. To never think when somebody else gets a promotion that we have been demoted. When somebody stands up, not to think that we've been pushed aside. Instead, we choose to use our experience and we choose to listen to the one who breathes life into us to set others up to win, so that we can say, your win is my win. For us to be able to do this, we need to take an important step. We need to fill our heart with the one who wants us all to win. Because it says in Luke 6, our mouth speaks what our heart is full of. Matthew 12:34 says it another way. It says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That means whatever comes out of our mouth is who we really are. Our words have power, church, and we need to take back control of our mouths. Amen? So often we complain, we develop a negative attitude, and from that negative attitude, we say negative things. And with negative talk comes negative consequences for ourselves, as well as the person that we're talking about or talking to. If we would just stop to reflect on where negativity starts. When things start to get bad, we first begin to think about how bad things are. And then we start to complain about how bad things are. And before we know it, complaining is all we do. And soon complaining consumes us. Have you ever encountered a person and everything that comes out of their mouth is negative? They didn't just get like that in one day. It started from within. Words have power, and what starts from within eventually comes out. And it not only affects them, but over time it begins to affect the people around them. That's how words have power. They have power over the person speaking them and power to infect the person who listens to them. Our words have power, and knowing the power of our words should encourage us not to be so reckless. They have the power to curse people, the power to provoke people, and the power to seriously annoy people. But with the same mouth, our words have the power to praise people, offer encouragement, and give good advice. Some of us are so busy talking that we never really pay attention to what comes out of our mouth. But the way we speak, what we say, and how we say it determines what fills our heart. Are we expecting figs from thorn bushes? How can we get our heart right? What does it look like to speak life into somebody? Well, I think to start, it means getting up in the morning and thanking God for our day, even though we don't know how it's going to turn out. Instead of complaining about what He hasn't done or blaming others for our problems, speaking life means that instead of saying everything that comes to our mind, we would think before we speak, that we would pause just for a moment and choose to say something positive instead of negative. Speaking life means that we will watch what we say, that we would speak words of encouragement both to ourselves and the people around us. Maybe I need to take some time to think about why it can be difficult for me personally to set someone up to win. Maybe I need to work through the feelings that can keep me stuck. That's how we get the plank out of our eye. Maybe we need to ask the person who knows us best why or how we get stuck and work out how to move forward from those experiences. Another really important thing to think about is who we surround ourselves with. I listened to a message from a guy named Rich Wilkerson Jr., Will's hero, a year ago, and he said this: surround yourself with people who see greatness in you, even when you don't see it in yourself. That's huge. Surround yourself with people who see greatness in you, even when you don't see it in yourself. Young people, this is a big deal. Who are you surrounding yourselves with? People who are positive or negative? People who build you up or tear you down? People who see greatness in you or people who diss you? Because you are great. You are awesome. And people who genuinely care about you will see that greatness in you. And this doesn't just apply to you, adults. Who are we surrounding ourselves with? People who speak life or death? Because it's really easy to be like people we spend time with. Filling our heart with God is how we speak life. Because when we are filled with Him, we actually really begin to dislike negative talk. It won't happen overnight. It's not easy. It needs to be a choice that we make every day. Remembering that everything that comes out of our mouth speaks life or death, victory or defeat, insecurity or confidence, weakness or strength, trust or doubt. Words can teach, encourage, and uplift. They can also discourage, reject, and demean. Words express gratitude, love, and joy, but also selfishness, hate, and despondency. Our aim is to fill our heart with God so that we speak what He says about our situation and not what our inconsistent emotions want us to say. Imagine what it would be like if every single person in this place set us up to win. Imagine what we would be dreaming of achieving. Imagine what we would dare to believe we could do. Imagine what it would feel like to get up each day and the first thing we read was someone cheering us on. And the last thing that we read at night were more messages saying, "You're doing awesome. You got this." Imagine all we could achieve if we would just allow one another to win. To finish today, I want to ask us to do something that might feel a little bit uncomfortable for some of us, but I want us to be brave. I want us to stand today and I want us to hold hands. I want us to become this unit where we're all together. Anywhere there is an aisle or a gap, I want us to move across so that there are no gaps. Would you do that with me today? Stand up. Hold hands. Upstairs, move together, guys. Don't be shy. Has everyone looked at LinkedIn? Look around, make sure that everyone's connected to somebody. I want you to just stop for a minute and look around. Look how different the room looks. There are no gaps. No places where people are alone. No sections where the enemy can get in and close ranks. We join up where the enemy wants to tear us apart. Because when we are connected, the devil can't get in. When we are connected, he can't confuse and undo and separate, because together we are stronger. Together we can be unstoppable, and together we will move forward. God. We stand here today together. We stand here with arms held so that the devil can't get in and separate. God, we stand here united in awe of you, the one who gave it all for us. God, we stand here with arms held high and hearts abandoned, just wanting to give back to you, God. We want you to take back control of our hearts, God. We want to speak life into the people who are around us. And so, God, we need you to be able to do that. We need you to fill us back up, God. We need to just get rid of everything else in our heart that tears people apart, and instead just ask that you would fill us up, God. And help us do it together. Help us do it for one another. Help us to set each other up to win, so that we would be seen as this mighty, unstoppable force. We would be united, and not so that we would get any glory for that, but so that you would be seen, so that people would see that you have saved them and that you love them. You are awesome, and we love you. Amen.